Well, hello again, friends. My name is Will Davis Jr., and this is Good News Today. And we are still in the first chapter of First Peter. It's good stuff. We're going to finish the first chapter this week, I think, as we're in week 5 now of Good News Today, our study. And I want to cover, I'm going to read to you First Peter chapter 1, 20 and 21. And we're going to cover 20 today and 20 to 21 tomorrow. But I want to read them both because they go together. You ready? He, Jesus, was foreknown before the foundation of the world, but was made manifest in these last times for the sake of you. You who through him are believers in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are in God. That's the ESV. The New International of verse 20 says, He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Okay, that's the verse I want to deal with. A little bit of theology here. The word foreknown is the idea of selected out beforehand. It's not complicated. NIV says chosen, but there's this obvious omniscience, omniscience, awareness, mental capacity that's unlimited of God to know and foresee everything. And there was a plan laid in eternity. Remember Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's the beginning of time, space, matter, and life. There's a whole lot of stuff going on before Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1 is when his story, God's interaction with human beings and the planet and the world that he created, the universe, begins. But there's a whole lot of stuff happening before Genesis chapter 1. We just think it's the beginning. It's the beginning for us, not the beginning for God. There is no beginning for God. So all this story is being told beforehand. So what was foreknown was that Jesus was going to be disclosed and given to redeem people like you and me. That better than gold and silver we talked about yesterday, that was what was foreknown. The phrase, the foundation of the world, it's NIV calls it the creation of the world. Man, it's such a beautiful term. It is an architectural term, obviously. And it is the idea of literally a foundation being laid or a foundation being developed for the building of a house. And it speaks of that moment when God spoke, let there be light, and whatever was before that, and boom, out came everything. And ex nihilo, from nothing to something, all the universe, all the cosmos was created. In fact, the word world there is not earth. It's cosmos, it's universe. Our word cosmos comes from it. So before that, before there was any substance to the universe, there was a plan laid. My dad used to talk about the meeting before the meeting. The old leadership principle that you never go into a meeting without knowing the outcome beforehand. And the way you know that is you have a meeting before the meeting. And you say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and here's the discussion points we anticipate, and here's how we're going to respond so we can get the outcome we want. And that's not always the most ethical ways to have meetings, but it's what happens in business settings and even church settings all the time, the meeting before the meeting. And there was a meeting before the meeting, so to speak, in creation. There was a meeting before creation when, in the wisdom of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the plan was laid that at some point in the future, Jesus Christ would be made manifest to redeem people from their forefathers' passed down sins. A redemption bought with something better than gold and silver, the blood of the Lamb. And that plan was hatched and secured before Genesis 1 ever happened. Now think about the grace and loving nature of a God who would choose that plan. He could have just said, I'm not going to create them. But in his foreknowledge, he saw the creation, he saw the fall, Genesis 3, he saw the need, and he saw the solution as being in his own hands. And rather than saying, I'm done with this, let's just not do it, the plan was hatched that 1/3 of the Trinity would be transformed and would become human. And would live among us, manifest God's glory, die, shed the precious blood of a lamb, and set us free. And what Peter says here is that even though the plan was hatched before the foundation of the world, Jesus wasn't made manifest until what Peter calls these last days. this last epic, this last season. We've been living in the last days since Pentecost, Acts chapter 2. We're in the last epic, the last season, the last times. We don't know how long it's going to be, but we're in it. It's fourth quarter. Could be, we don't know what the time is on the clock, but it's fourth quarter. And Peter says he was made manifest for us who believe, those of us who are believers of God. Remember, Peter is writing to a crowd who never saw Jesus. He's writing to believers scattered throughout what is now modern Turkey. And he says, you have something I don't have. You love him and you haven't seen him. You believe in him and haven't seen him. I saw him, I believe. I saw him, I loved. Your faith's even greater. And he says it's for you, people like you, that had never saw him but choose to believe, that he's been revealed in these last days. Folks, that includes you and me. Here, 2,000 years, 2 millennia after this was written, he's talking about us too. That in this last epic, this last season, Jesus Christ was made manifest so we could believe. Even though the plan was made before Genesis 1 ever happened. That's the wisdom, that's the plan, that's what Paul calls the administration of the ages, the summing up all things in Jesus Christ, summing up of all things in Jesus Christ. That's what he's talking about. It wasn't haphazard, it wasn't accidental. It was a plan hatched before eternity, and the solution, the answer was we're going to send Christ at the right time to redeem humanity with the precious blood of the Lamb. And they did, and we're living in the fruit of it. And that, my friend, is really, really good news. I'll see you tomorrow.